People will look at this and they will say, are you kidding me? I mean, that's basically a house payment for a lot of people.
Repo floods are hitting auctions and the banks are just refusing to sell them for a really dumb reason. Now, you'd think the banks would be scrambling to offload these assets, right? But instead, they're playing it cool, or maybe a bit too cool, and hanging on to these properties for reasons that many of us are scratching our heads over. What's the game plan here? And what the heck is happening? Right now, the lots are packed beyond capacity with a staggering number of vehicles that simply haven't found new owners. This ongoing stagnation isn't just a quirk of fate, it's the result of three major factors that are stacked on top of each other and led us to this situation. First, we have an alarmingly high volume of unsold cars. This is more than mere numbers, it's a headache for dealers and a despairing sight for those hoping to find a good deal. The sheer mass of repossessed vehicles has resulted in a significant backlog, creating a congested environment where cars just sit, waiting for someone to take them home. But this is just the top of the iceberg. And adding to the dilemma are the so-called repeat offenders. You know the ones, those cars that have lingered too long in limbo, batch after batch, refusing to leave this lot of unsold vehicles. They haven't just come to visit, they've overstayed their welcome. These repeat offenders make it difficult for newer inventory to grab buyers' attention and create a ripple effect that impacts the overall turnover at the lot. So why does this matter? Well, when large numbers of cars sit unsold, we're not just talking about idle vehicles. We're witnessing a turbulent ripple effect that impacts the entire market ecosystem. It leads to oversaturation, which can cause prices to plummet faster than a lead balloon. This scenario creates a nightmare for dealerships that depend on consistent sales to keep the wheels turning. The chain reaction is alarming, with every unsold car representing a missed opportunity for both the seller and potential buyers. Additionally, there's a broader context here that cannot be ignored. The tying together of these unsold vehicles and their aligned stories presents a window into consumer behavior and economic trends. Are people changing how they view car ownership? Are they hesitant to commit due to economic uncertainty? Now let's dive into the troubling reality of the situation. The statistics paint a worrisome picture, highlighting the magnitude of the problem as it relentlessly grows. How bad is it really? The current landscape of repossessed vehicles at auctions is nothing short of alarming, marked by a significant backlog that reveals deeper economic challenges lurking beneath the surface. This isn't just a minor hiccup, the sheer magnitude of the situation calls for a closer look, especially on these two crucial things. The first thing is the high inventory levels that are weighing down the auction market. Did you know that Copart currently has around 1,048 repossessed vehicles awaiting sale? That's right, a staggering number of cars that have yet to find their lucky new owners. This backlog not only indicates an overwhelming volume of unsold vehicles, but also contributes to the increasing congestion in the auction marketplace. Picture a crowded lot filled with cars that have nowhere to go, each representing a missed opportunity and a growing dilemma. This isn't just an isolated event, it's part of a troubling trend that's emerging nationwide. According to data from Cox Automotive, vehicle repossession surged by a shocking 23% in the first half of 2024 compared to the previous year. What does that mean? More individuals are defaulting on their auto loans amid skyrocketing costs of living and relentlessly high interest rates. It's an unsettling reflection of the tough financial climate that countless families are navigating. But let's talk about the second part, and it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. When you stack this up against historical context, the figures become even more striking. The current repossession rate is not just a minor blip, it sits significantly higher than what we experienced during pre-pandemic times. Back in 2019, for the same period, the repossession rate hovered around 14%. Fast forward to now, and the rise over the last 18 months paints a sobering picture of the financial strain many borrowers are grappling with. It's a painful reminder that the economic environment isn't just about numbers, it's about people whose lives are impacted. This mounting backlog of repossessed vehicles at auctions is not just a statistical anomaly, it's a reflection of the challenges facing consumers today. Think about how this situation affects not just dealerships and banks, but the very individuals who are trying to make ends meet. For them, missing a car payment can lead to repossession, and that cycle creates clutter in an already packed market. Each car stuck in limbo is a story of hardship, dreams dashed, and financial struggles amplified. The ramifications stretch beyond mere statistics. They hint at a crisis that's rippling through the economy. If repossessions continue to climb, the inventory at auction will keep building, creating an even greater backlog that's difficult to manage and demoralizing for dealers and buyers alike. As car prices remain high and potential buyers grow hesitant, these challenges become even more pronounced. So, what does the future hold for this market? Will banks and dealerships adapt, or will they continue to navigate these muddy waters without a clear strategy? The ongoing backlog of repossessed vehicles raises critical questions about the economic environment and whether the tide will turn for those caught in this relentless cycle. Now, you are probably wondering what's causing this backlog. It comes down to a mix of different factors that most customers likely aren't aware of. Let me tell you about it in detail. The stubborn refusal of banks. This is a major issue, folks, and the second factor that has gotten all of us in this mess. It's not just some minor quirk of the industry. Banks often cling to their set prices for repossessed vehicles, like a child hanging onto a favorite toy. But what's wrong with this picture? For starters, many of these prices are set above the current market values, a big red flag if you ask me. This rigid stance on pricing creates a significant barrier to successful sales. Potential buyers who might have their eyes on a car suddenly find themselves confronted with inflated price tags that would make even the most enthusiastic shopper do a double take. You'd think those prices might as well come with a not for sale sign because they can easily send buyers running for the hills. These inflated costs create a psychological barrier that can deter even the most interested buyers from entering the fray. Consider the implications of this inflexible pricing model. When banks refuse to adjust their pricing in accordance with market realities, they are effectively locking themselves and those poor vehicles into a never-ending cycle of stagnation. The longer cars remain unsold on the lot, the more their value tends to drop amidst the broader market fluctuations. They turn from potential sales into mere liabilities, dragging down the overall inventory value for everyone involved. What's particularly frustrating about this situation is that banks often overlook the simple fact that real sales do require some level of flexibility. The market is a dynamic entity. It shifts and bends, influenced by consumer demand and purchasing power. So, a failure to adapt to these changes can be almost catastrophic. Cars that could have sold quickly become burdens sitting in limbo and collecting dust, while frustrated dealers face mounting pressure. Why is this so important? Because the way banks set their prices directly impacts not just their bottom line, but also the entire market ecosystem. It creates a ripple effect that ripples through consumers, dealers, and manufacturers alike. The stakes are high, and if banks don't recognize this and take action to remedy their pricing strategies, everyone involved stands to lose. Profit maximization. Many banks have this relentless drive to recover as much money as possible from their repossessed assets. And honestly, who can blame them? It's only natural for any business to want to squeeze every last penny from their investments. However, there's a fine line between strategic profit seeking and setting expectations that stray far from reality. When banks aim for the highest dollar amounts, they can end up creating a dangerous disconnect with current market demand. The impact of this approach is profound. Instead of selling vehicles quickly, banks often find themselves on a treadmill of missed opportunities. The cars get stuck in limbo. Think about it. While you may have the best of intentions, hanging on for a price that isn't justified in the current market runs counter to practical sales strategies. Vehicles that could have easily found new homes instead become liabilities, sitting on the lot like forgotten toys gathering dust in the back of a cluttered closet. To make matters worse, when these cars remain unsold for extended periods, it creates a chain reaction. The longer they sit, the more their value diminishes. This process is like a ticking time bomb for inventory. Every second counts. Those vehicles, once perceived as valuable assets, gradually transition into stagnant relics of poor pricing strategies. It's an avoidable tragedy that so many banks seem unaware of, or perhaps just unwilling to accept. In the grand scheme of things, it begs a critical question. How are banks failing to recognize that the pursuit of higher profits only ends up hurting them in the long run? By stubbornly holding on to unrealistic expectations, they are not just affecting their bottom line, they're also impacting the wider market dynamics. Understanding consumer behavior and correctly matching prices to market reality should be paramount. After all, finding the sweet spot in pricing isn't just a strategy, it's an essential part of maintaining healthy inventory turnover in a competitive marketplace. Inventory turnover. These inflated price tags don't just sit there, they create a ripple effect that directly impacts inventory turnover. Instead of those cars zooming off the lot, they become stale reminders of missed opportunities. You know the type. Vehicles that could have flown out the door with the right pricing instead become stagnant assets, collecting dust and stories while waiting for interested buyers. This stagnation isn't just an annoyance, it morphs into a serious issue that every person stepping onto that lot can almost feel hanging in the air. Furthermore, there's another layer to this cycle that makes it even more complicated. When inventory doesn't move, it signals to other buyers that something isn't quite right. The initial interest begins to wane and that sense of urgency dissipates. Cars that could have been dynamic sales become stagnant markers of uncertainty, and this shift affects the entire market atmosphere. Potential customers start to question whether they truly want to engage in a marketplace that feels stuck, like they've stumbled into a game where the rules are rigged against them. Why does this matter? Because in a competitive environment, every single transaction is vital. The longer cars remain unsold on the lot, the more inventory management becomes a nightmare for the banks involved. They can't afford to let valuable assets languish when sales should be thriving. As time marches on, it's a poignant reminder that effective pricing strategies don't just help individual banks. They play a pivotal role in maintaining a healthy marketplace where buyers feel confident and willing to engage. The stakes are high. If banks continue down this path, they risk losing touch with the market, alienating potential customers, and ultimately seeing their sales numbers plummet. It's a precarious dance between maximizing profits and being realistic about market conditions. The crucial question remains: will banks wake up and adapt their pricing strategies to match what buyers are genuinely willing to pay? Let's break it down. The market dynamics. We're talking about the distressing clash between high prices and declining buyer interest. This situation creates a perfect storm that complicates sales. When prices soar beyond what prospective buyers are willing to shell out, it results in a palpable dip in interest. Imagine potential buyers walking through the lot only to be met with sky-high price tags that slam the door on their hopes. This unfortunate reality means that many vehicles are condemned to sit idle, collecting dust and waiting for a buyer who may never arrive. But hold on, there's more to this than just numbers. Broader economic conditions are influencing buyer behavior in ways that can't be ignored. Consider this. When consumers perceive uncertainty in the economy, their instincts kick in. They pull back from making significant purchases, especially when those purchases come with hefty price tags. Suddenly, what seemed like a dream car becomes a luxury out of reach. Financial constraints loom large in the minds of potential buyers. It's not just about what they want, but also about what they can actually afford. In these times of economic pressure, buying a car can feel like a gamble, one that many just aren't willing to take. Let's not forget the crucial imbalance between supply and demand. It's like a seesaw that's completely tipped, and the third factor that causes all these problems. On one side, you have an abundance of vehicles just waiting for homes. On the other, eager buyers are hesitant to engage because the prices aren't matching their expectations. This mismatch exacerbates the existing backlog of unsold cars and creates a frustrating stalemate in the marketplace. With many vehicles priced too high for the current economic climate, the essential equilibrium necessary for healthy sales has been significantly disrupted. This situation has major ramifications. As inventory takes longer to move off the lots, it not only strains sales, but also creates a ripple effect that can impact the entire market ecosystem. Dealerships may find themselves knee-deep in stagnant stock that just won't budge, resulting in mounting pressure to cut prices. That creates a domino effect, where lowered prices could potentially harm the perceived value of remaining inventory. The vibrant hustle and bustle of buying a car can turn into a slow crawl, reducing overall market energy and momentum. The real kicker: this environment leaves both buyers and sellers in a tough spot. Buyers want great deals, while sellers find themselves grappling with the challenge of making sales in a difficult climate. Everyone's waiting on the sidelines, trying to navigate this precarious dance. Left unresolved, this dynamic can lead to a prolonged cycle of stagnation with no clear way out. Exploring options. When it comes to higher-end repossessed vehicles, the complexity deepens even further. Take the 2022 Suburban, for instance. At first glance, it might seem like a jewel waiting to be unearthed. However, the reality is that this market segment comes with its own unique challenges. While these models may look flashy and appealing from the outside, potential buyers must be wary. Flaws like hail damage can dramatically knock down their immediate resale value. This is where buyers need to proceed with caution and a keen eye. It's essential to weigh each potential purchase carefully, taking into account both physical and mechanical issues. Are you merely falling in love with the appearance, or are you considering what lies beneath that shiny exterior? The dilemmas keep piling up. Repairs may be needed, or hidden damages could turn what looks like a great deal into a financial burden. This intricate dance of decision-making adds another layer of difficulty to the already challenging process at auctions. It's not just about the thrill of the bid anymore. It's a risk assessment in a high-stakes environment. Buyers are forced to put on their detective hats, searching for the truth behind the glamour. Every dent, scratch, and mechanical issue becomes a pivotal part of the buying equation. Ultimately, the world of repossessed vehicles is fraught with uncertainty. For buyers eager to flip cars for a profit, or simply hoping to find a reliable vehicle, it's a tough road ahead. There's the thrill of the auction that gets the adrenaline pumping, but lurking beneath is the daunting reality of market dynamics that make every decision feel critical. One of the victims that are facing this problem is CarMax. The CarMax disaster. When you cast your eyes over CarMax lots, it's hard to miss one glaring fact. They are bulging at the seams with repossessed vehicles. Everywhere you look, there's a chaotic jumble of cars, ranging from everyday sedans to high-end luxury models like Jaguars and Range Rovers, all prominently displaying that alarming repossessed label. This scene isn't just visually overwhelming, it underscores a pressing issue, and, on a more personal level, serves as a poignant reminder that many of these vehicles still hold the belongings of their previous owners. The odds are that those owners never saw it coming. It's as if these cars have become haunting remnants of financial struggles, quietly idling in their lots, while the echoes of their past narratives linger heavily around them. So, what's fueling this unforgiving surge in vehicle repossessions? There's data from Cox Automotive that reveals an astonishing spike of 20.4% in repossessions. Projections are even bleaker, indicating that a staggering 1.5 million vehicles could face repossession by the year's close. What's behind this alarming trend? Economic forces, like relentless inflation and soaring borrowing costs, are placing unbearable strains on consumers. When you factor in the expiration of government stimulus measures that previously helped citizens juggle their financial woes, the landscape becomes even more precarious. This troubling cocktail has caught countless individuals off temperature, pushing them into the deep end and resulting in defaults. For CarMax, the ramifications are considerable. They're left scrambling to manage an overwhelming influx of repossessed vehicles, and oh boy, logistical nightmares are mounting. Handling such an oversized inventory isn't merely a matter of securing adequate parking space for this influx. It brings with it a surge in holding costs that can't be ignored. Over time, as these vehicles sit unsold, their value steadily drops, creating a nasty ripple effect that could severely dent CarMax's financial health. The longer these unsold vehicles linger, the more pressure mounts on the company to unload them, usually at prices that barely tap into what's owed on the accompanying loans. Now we arrive at the crux of the matter: pricing. CarMax has received a fair amount of criticism for maintaining their used vehicle prices at an elevated level. Honestly, can you blame potential buyers for getting turned off? When they have a multitude of affordable options calling out to them from the sidelines, who wouldn't look elsewhere? With buyers flocking to lower-priced alternatives, traffic into CarMax stores is noticeably dwindling like a disappointing Sunday brunch. It's a frustrating reality, primarily for existing customers who are searching for deals that won't make their wallet scream. To further complicate matters, rising interest rates are adding salt to the wound, making it increasingly hard for buyers to justify splurging on a vehicle when their financing costs are on the rise too. The stakes have never been higher, and the financial risk confronting CarMax are piling up. When they reluctantly resort to auctioning off repossessed vehicles, a dark cloud of potential losses hangs ominously overhead. Selling those cars at auction often means settling for prices that fall woefully short of what consumers still owe on their loans. Now, isn't that a hard pill to swallow? It's not merely about shifting cars, it's about wrestling with the fallout that arises from their conditions, which may not be anything close to pristine due to their previous owners' challenging financial predicaments. Each repossession carries a narrative woven from the threads of financial distress, shattered dreams, and harsh realities that led to these vehicles landing at CarMax. The company now finds itself in a precarious position, navigating a treacherous market while striving to recoup its losses and preserve its reputation. This whirlwind of repossessions and inventory confusion drives home one crucial point: the automotive market is anything but stable, and for CarMax, the road ahead is fraught with challenges. What will the future market be like? As we dive into the current economic strain, it's becoming increasingly clear that ongoing inflation and persistently high interest rates are creating a perfect storm. More consumers are finding it harder to keep up with their auto loan payments, leading many to the precipice of repossession. It's a daunting scenario. Projected figures suggest we could see more than 1.5 million vehicles taken back by lenders by the end of this year. If this trajectory continues, we can expect the backlog of unsold vehicles at auctions to significantly worsen. This situation will likely spiral into a vicious cycle. Increased repossessions will lead to even higher inventory levels at auctions, which in turn will push down prices further. It's a ticking time bomb ready to explode. Now let's talk about inventory management challenges that dealerships and auction houses are facing. Picture this: lots filled to the brim with unsold vehicles. The congestion is real, and it can create logistical nightmares for everyone involved. For instance, Copart, a major player in the auction market, currently has around 1,048 repossessed vehicles waiting for their turn to be sold. This sheer volume of cars creates a bottleneck, making it nearly impossible to manage inventory effectively. As a result, dealers may feel pressured to adopt aggressive pricing strategies just to clear out the stockpile. If they don't act fast, they could find themselves buried under a mountain of vehicles they can't sell. But that's not all. Let's consider the stagnation of sales, a troubling symptom of overcrowded lots. Many of these vehicles are turning into what can only be described as repeat offenders, lingering in limbo without ever selling. This stagnation paints a grim picture for dealerships as turnover rates decline and revenues start to plummet. With unsold inventory piling up, the costs associated with holding these vehicles continue to climb, further straining the financial health of these businesses. This is where the need for flexibility comes into play. Banks and dealers alike may need to rethink their pricing structures in light of these harsh market realities. The stubborn refusal of banks to lower their prices is creating significant roadblocks to sales. If they cling too tightly to old pricing models, they risk locking themselves into a cycle of stagnation that could suffocate their businesses in the long run. As inventory levels climb and consumer demand dwindles, the downward pressure on prices is likely to increase dramatically. This shift could benefit buyers looking for deals, but it's a double-edged sword for sellers who may find themselves forced to sell at a loss. The landscape is shifting. What once seemed stable is now in flux, and both parties will need to adapt or face tough consequences. Furthermore, we cannot overlook the changing consumer purchasing behavior. Economic uncertainty is prompting consumers to adopt a more cautious approach to making significant purchases, such as vehicles. This shift could lead many to opt for leasing options or choose lower-cost alternatives, effectively changing the game for the repossession market. Let's talk about the impact on financing. As interest rates keep climbing, the cost of financing becomes increasingly expensive, potentially deterring potential buyers from even entering the market. When buyers hesitate, it further complicates existing inventory issues, creating a ripple effect that could exacerbate the challenges already facing the industry. But what's your thoughts on this? Let's know in the comments. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next video.